Republicans have challenged you on this point on Capitol Hill, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond. They point to Border Patrol's own numbers, which show that going back to October of last year, there were more than 1 million apprehensions, but then there were also more than 530,000 gotaways. That's roughly the size of the population of the city of Baltimore. How can you say that the border is not open?
So we removed, returned, and expelled 1.4 million people last year. Ask those 1.4 million people if they think the border is open. Our apprehension rate at the border is consistent with the apprehension rate in prior years.
And then in El Paso, they've declared
thanks to the extraordinary work of the United States Border Patrol.
Thank you. And in El Paso, they've declared a state of emergency, but we've also seen this in other cities like New York and Chicago. I'm wondering, while so much of the focus is on the southern border itself, can you tell us more about the steps that DHS is taking to support those cities elsewhere, as this surge affects not just that geography, but other cities and states across the country?
I would say a number of things. Number one, we're grateful to Leader Schumer and Congress for the Emergency Food and Shelter Program funding in the omnibus this past December of $800 million. That's a significant increase over the prior year's funding of $150 million. We're working very closely with cities and communities along the border and in the interior of the United States. We need the system fixed.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Back to the question of mass releases. I know you've pushed back against that, but the Florida Attorney General has filed a lawsuit against you, alleging that you are about to conduct a policy of mass releases with the news that was released yesterday. What's your response to that, and more broadly, what's your message to the judicial branch, who is playing a role in this process as well?
Well, I don't send messages to the judicial branch. The judges make the decisions that they believe are warranted under the facts and laws before them. But I will say this: it is interesting to see some of the tools that we employ that are successful or operationally needed to be challenged in the courts. So, for example, the parole process that we announced and implemented on January 5th for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. Immediately, that demonstrated a reduction in the number of those individuals arriving at our southern border of over 95%, and yet it's been challenged in a court. And so our parole authority, when we use it to release a fraction of the people whom we encounter, and that is challenged, I question the motives of the plaintiffs.
Good. Thanks, great. Now, following up on the emergency food and shelter program that you just mentioned, groups in El Paso that are helping to feed and house this influx of migrants, they say this program has a problem in that the funding can only be used to help migrants who have encountered DHS and been processed. Is that requirement realistic to the situation that these communities are facing?
It is necessary, and I should say this past Friday, under the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, we distributed $332 million, primarily to border communities. We now have, under the new structure that the omnibus that Congress equipped us with, we now have the Shelter and Services Program that we in the Department of Homeland Security will control. That will prove, I think, more nimble. And we, I think, have 363...
That same restriction that it has to be, can only be used for migrants who have been processed. So what about those who have not been processed? Is there no way to help with addressing the humanitarian need there?
So just to finish my thought, I think we have about $363 million to distribute through the Shelter and Services Program, and I believe that non-governmental organizations in the cities address the needs of individuals who have not been processed.
All right, Brimo, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Corinne.
You can go.
If you could raise your hand so I can orient visually.
Thank you
yeah,
so
thank you.
much, Corinne, Mr. Secretary. So they were saying here that Republicans have changed the administration on the border, but at the same time, some Democrats are saying that President Biden broke his promise of having a more humane immigration system, and that he's finishing Trump's job. So I ask you, how is it more humane to expel people and penalize them, people who are fleeing violence, poverty? You were just saying that the number of deportation was the highest last year of any year.
So let me just, the words have legal significance. So an expulsion is what happens under the Public Health Authority of Title 42. We sought to end the application of Title 42 some time ago. This administration stands markedly different than the prior administration. Markedly different. We have, in fact, a family reunification task force that has now reunified, I think, more than 700 families that were cruelly separated. We have, by the prior administration, we have rescinded the public charge rule that punishes individuals who've migrated to the United States just for accessing public resources to which they are entitled. We have granted temporary protected status to quite a number of countries. This president has led the unprecedented expansion of lawful pathways. We stand markedly different than the prior administration. We do not resemble it at all. What we do, and by the way, we have rebuilt an asylum system that was dismantled in the prior administration. We have resumed refugee processing all around the world, and these regional processing centers are going to accelerate the, pardon me, the refugee process in an unprecedented way. We are a nation of immigrants, and we are a nation of laws. And those laws provide that if one qualifies for humanitarian relief, then one has established a basis to remain in the United States. And if one has not, then one is to be removed. And that is exactly what is going to happen.